In this lecture, let's go ahead and start adding chart over here. So in order to add a chart over here, we will be using a JavaScript library called as chart.js. So simply go over to Google or simply type in chart.js in your URL bar. And the first link which pops up is going to be the official link of the chart.js library. So if you go in there, it will actually introduce you to what exactly chart.js is. So it says simple yet flexible JavaScript charting for designers and developers. So while creating web applications, many a times you would actually need to create charts. Now creating charts is actually quite tricky because it involves making use of some graphics, making use of the canvas, so on and so forth. Therefore, chart.js has actually made it quite simple by providing us with their own library which we can use to create charts. So now in order to go ahead and create a nutrition chart here, we will be making use of this library, which is the chart.js library. So now in order to go ahead and get started with chart.js, I will click on this option which says get started. And now it will actually give me this page, and here it will actually tell you the installation steps. So you could either download chart.js or you could use something which is called as a CDN. So CDN stands for Content Delivery Network, and this will actually give you a link which you can use in your project. So simply go over here, click on this link, and it will actually open up in a new page. And once you go to this particular web page, you should be able to find these links right here. So in order to actually get this link, I will simply go ahead and I will say something like copy HTML. So now once you have this HTML with you, you simply need to go ahead and go over here, and you need to add this particular script tag right over here in the head tag. So now once you add that, you now have access to the chart.js library. And now in order to actually add some charts to your site, you could go ahead and you could copy this entire code which we have over here. Now this code is actually for a bar chart. So as of now, I'm simply going to go ahead, copy this particular line. So this is actually just a simple chart. So if I go ahead and let's actually paste this over here in this particular column. And once you paste that thing in, let's save it, go back to our web page and see how it looks like. So now if I go ahead and hit refresh, as you can see, we don't have any sort of chart in here. That's because this particular thing only adds a chart, which is going to be an empty chart. So this right here is actually just a blank canvas with an ID my chart having this width and this height. Now in order to actually fill up this chart, you would need to go ahead and write in some JavaScript. So here we have some ready-made JavaScript which we can use. So I'm going to simply copy this for now, go back over here to our code and go right below where the script tag ends and paste this code right over here. Just make sure that you are able to distinguish the chart code with the other JavaScript code which you have. So now if you get back and if you hit refresh, as you can see, now you have this type of bar chart right up over here. Now this is a bar chart. However, to visualize the macronutrients, let's say we want a pie chart or a donut chart. So in order to get a donut, you can simply go ahead, you can scroll down a little bit, and here you will have the option for donut and pie. So if you click on that, as you can see, now you actually have this thing as a donut. So in order to create a donut chart or a pie chart, you would use this kind of code. So the only change which you need to make to any bar graph to change its type is that you change this type variable which you have in your code. So now as we want a donut, I will simply copy that. And here, if you would go over here and change the type to donut, save the code, get back here. And now if you hit refresh, as you can see, you will have this nice looking donut chart. Now the problem though here is that if you actually look at the data here, this data is nothing but the random data which we have up over here. So now we need to understand how this chart.js code works. So let's go ahead and understand each and every line. So let's take a look at the first line. So this line is nothing but, this line is to get the context, that is to get this particular canvas element right here, so that JavaScript would be able to go ahead and draw something upon it. And that's what is actually done here. We have got the context of the chart using its ID, which is my chart. So we have used the get element by ID method to get the my chart, and then we have got the context of that particular chart. Now once we have this context, that is once you have the access to the canvas, now you can actually go ahead and draw a actual chart. So here, as you can see, we have created a new chart object. We have passed in the context here, and after the context you need to specify the attributes of the chart. So the attributes of the chart are nothing but the kind of the chart. So in this case we are using the chart of the type donut, henceforth we have donut right here. And after specifying the type, you would also need to specify the data as well, because without the data your chart is pretty much useless. The only reason why we use chart is to represent or visualize data or information. Henceforth you do need to go ahead and mention the labels and the data as well. So that's what's actually done here. Here we have labels, which is red, blue, yellow, green, purple and orange, and as you can see these labels are listed up over here. So now in our case, we actually want to go ahead and sort of get our very own labels. So let's go ahead and replace these labels. So I would say carbs, protein and fats. So we only want 3 labels, so I will get rid of the rest of the labels right here. So now if I go ahead, hit refresh, as you can see, now we have only 3 labels here. Now if you scroll down a little bit, as you can see, you have something which is called as a data set here, and the data set is nothing but it actually represents your data. So the first parameter in the data set is again label. However, we are not concerned with that because it does not affect our chart so much. So now let's move on to the next part, which is one of the most important parts right here, which is nothing but the data. So now let's talk about this data. So the first value in this particular data array is 12. So if you hover over this, as you can see, it says that carbs are 12, and that's because carbs value correspond to this value which we have here. So by that logic, 19 should be for protein and 3 should be for fats. So let's check that. So yeah, 19 is for protein and 3 is for fats, and the rest of the things are undefined. So that means we no longer need these 3 values. And now these values alone should work. So if I hit refresh, as you can see, we have these 3 values right here. Now the problem with this is that we don't want these values right here. Instead, we actually want to represent the carbohydrates, proteins and fats values in terms of the percentage. So let's say, for example, I want to calculate the percentage of carbohydrates consumed, the percentage of fats and the percentage of protein consumed. I now need to go ahead and first of all calculate their individual percentages. So now let's go ahead and do that. So in order to do that, I can go right up over here and I can create a couple of variables in here. So first of all, I need to go ahead and calculate the sum of carbs, proteins and fats. So for that, I'll create a variable and I'll call it as total. So I'll say var total equals. And now in order to get the individual values of carbs, proteins and fats, we already have those values up over here. So now it's only the matter of summing them up. So I will say carbs plus protein plus fats. So once we have these values, now I can actually go ahead and calculate the percentage amount of each one of them. So I will say var, let's say carbs p as the variable name for carbs percentage. Now in order to calculate the percentage, it's actually quite simple. I could simply do carbs divided by total. So that will give me the average, and to get the percentage, I will simply multiply it by 100. However, this will actually give me a floating point value, and henceforth I will enclose this entire thing in the math.round function or math.round method. So now this will actually give me the percentage of carbohydrates as an integer value. So I will do the same thing for protein and fats as well. So this is actually going to be protein This is going to be fats. And now let's change this thing as well. So that's going to be protein, that's going to be fats. Okay, so now this will actually give us the values for carbs percentage, protein percentage, and fat percentage. Now the only thing which we need to do is that now instead of having these random values in here, I need to replace this with carbs P, protein P, and the final one is fats P. Okay, so now once that thing is done, we are now pretty much good to go. Now if I switch back and hit refresh, as you can see, now the content has been modified. So it actually gave me a total breakdown that the carbohydrates are 65%, protein is 23%, and fats are 12%. So you can also cross verify this by actually comparing these values right here. So if you take a look, carbs are the most, then we have protein, and then we have the least number of fats. And if you calculate this, hopefully this should come out to be correct. Now the next question is, why do we have these background color and border color values? So these values are the color values for carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. That means these three values actually cover these three data, and you can actually get rid of these values which we have here. So I will get rid of them, and I will get rid of them as well. So now if I save them, this should still be working fine. And one more thing which you could do here is that as these lines no longer make sense, I can simply go ahead and get rid of these options right here. So once I go ahead, do that, we should be having a clean looking chart. Now, if you want to also display the percentage of carbs, proteins, and fats up over here, you can do that as well. So now inside the labels, instead of just displaying the carbs, I can say this plus display the carbs percentage as well, and append a nice percentage sign in front of it. So if I do percentage over here, hit refresh, as you can see, it will say carbs 65%. I can also have some space in here so that it looks better. And as you can see, it will now display the carbs value here. So I can do the same thing with protein as well. I can simply copy this, paste it up over here, replace it with protein percentage, and do the same thing with fats as well. Okay, so now once we are done with this, as you can see, those values are now represented up over here. So now the final thing which I want to discuss is how to change the colors over here. So the color values represented over here are actually RGBA color values, and these values can actually be changed. And this thing which we have right here is actually the opacity. So if you actually want to make it transparent, you can set this thing closer to 0, and if you want to make this thing solid, you can set it equal to 1. So let's go ahead and let's try setting these values to 1, and let's see what happens. So if I do that and if I hit refresh, as you can see, this is what our chart looks like. So if you want to replace these color values with some other color values, you can simply go ahead and search for RGBA color picker or RGBA color values, and you should be able to go ahead and find some tool which will actually help you to pick some RGBA colors. So there are plenty of tools available which you can use. You could use any one of them to pick your own color, and you can change the color of your chart. So as of now, I'll keep these values as it is because it looks pretty decent. So now once we are done with this, we are pretty much done designing the chart, and our calorie counter application is almost ready. However, there's one small functionality which we need to add up over here. And that functionality is the functionality to be able to delete an item. So now we have the ability to go ahead and add some item in here. However, now we also need to know how to delete certain item from this particular table. So we are going to learn about that in the upcoming lecture. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.